Hi, everybody. This is a Jeff Townsend media production. Rawr.
Have you been searching for a podcast? Do you want to learn from some great content creators? Well, you've come to the right place. Indie Podcaster with your host, Jeff Townsend, the Indie Podcast Father.
This is Jeff Townsend, and as you're aware, Indie Podcaster is currently on a break. I'm actually tied up with a job in the podcast industry and then a lot of other projects that I'm working on. But I want to continue to give you some content that you may find helpful along your podcasting journey. With that being said, I'm going to share some episodes of Good Morning Podcasters. Yes, that's right, the return of Good Morning Podcasters. Fuzz Martin and I purchased the rights to that, and podcasting sucks. So today, I'll be sharing some episodes of Fuzz Martin's Good Morning Podcasters with you. This is great information. You could learn a lot from it. To learn more, go to goodmorningpodcasters.com. Let's check out some of these episodes. I'm playing them back to back.
Good morning, podcasters. Today we're talking about marketing automation and how you could use it for your podcast. My name is Fuzz Martin, and this is Good Morning Podcasters. 3 to 4 times per week, I bring you actionable ideas in marketing, public relations, social media, and advertising that you can use to improve your show. And of course, on every Saturday morning, Jeff Townsend of Jeff Townsend Media joins me on this feed to talk about things that we find difficult with podcasting on a show we call Podcasting Sucks. And actually, somebody else called it that, and then we bought it from him. Who am I to tell you about all this stuff? Well, I'm an owner at Epic Creative in Milwaukee. I'm the agency's chief strategy officer. I also used to be a radio morning show host and program director. I spent 15 years in the country music game. So let's get into this. What is marketing automation and how can you use it for your podcast? Marketing automation is a piece of software that you can use to automate your marketing. I'm really hitting you over the head with really in-depth details today. Tell your friends that Fuzz just told you that marketing automation is software used to automate marketing. But seriously, it's software that can take your listeners' actions. Let's say they fill out the contact form on your website, and then the software uses that action as a trigger to do things automatically, like send an email, notify the podcast host, create a calendar invite, segment listeners into different lists depending on what their preferences are, A/B test an email headline or a call to action, personalize your emails, or even help you determine what kind of content you should be creating next. So what are the benefits of marketing automation for podcasters? Well, the possibilities of marketing automation are endless, but here are 3 quick ways you could use marketing automation software that could make your life easier and your listeners' experiences more engaging. Let's say someone signs up for your newsletter. You could automatically send them an email thanking them for their subscription and then send them a link to download a free gift. And then if the system detects that they haven't yet downloaded the free gift, it could automatically send an email reminding them to download that gift. Let's say you have a bigger show that gets a lot of feedback from listeners and it becomes overwhelming for one person manning the inbox. You could set up the automation to send the listener's feedback to a different person on your team depending on the subject of their email. So let's say you could send guest requests to the person in charge of booking. You could send feedback to the host. You could send technical issues to the person in charge of your website, all without having to hit the forward button. And another way is if you produce all of the episodes in your season at one time. Let's say you have a serial style podcast or a short run podcast that's highly produced. You could pre-write and pre-produce all of your emails announcing the release of the next episode and then drip them each out to your subscribers on the day that new episode comes out so that you don't have to take care of that each week. It will automatically happen for you. Again, the possibilities for marketing automation are nearly endless. So where do you start? Well, marketing automation runs the gamut from mostly affordable to ungodly expensive, depending on what you're getting into. The most popular marketing automation platforms out there right now, of course, are HubSpot, Pardot, also Salesforce Marketing Cloud, which is kind of tied into Pardot right now. MailChimp's customer journeys, Keep, which is KEAP. You may have heard that on some podcast ads, or you might be running those podcast ads yourself. Marketo, which is owned by Adobe, and SharpSpring, which is owned by Constant Contact. Most podcasters are only going to use a plan like HubSpot or MailChimp. These platforms start pretty low. MailChimp standard plan, which I believe is the lowest, starts at $17 per month, and the HubSpot starter plan is starting at $49 per month. However, they jump up pretty high pretty quickly. MailChimp goes from $17 a month to $60 a month when you get above 500 contacts. HubSpot jumps from $49 a month to $90 a month when you get above the first 1,000 contacts. Keep and SharpSpring are full of features, but they're about $170 to $400 per month just to get started. But again, they're full of features. And the biggies like Pardot, Salesforce Marketing Cloud, and Marketo are pretty much outrageously expensive, at least for a podcaster, unless you're a very big network. But all those platforms are extremely powerful, and we use those every day here at our agency for our larger clients. But some are paying up to $100,000 a year for that software. So what would I do as a podcaster? Well, if you want to try marketing automation and you have fewer than 500 contacts, I would definitely start with the MailChimp customer journeys. It's a great platform, and while the lower end setup is somewhat limited, as a podcaster, you're not going to need a full-featured marketing automation platform for your show. That said, if you're going to try that out, be sure to do the monthly payment instead of going all in on a yearly payment until you know that it's going to be beneficial for your show or your business or both. If you have a slightly bigger operation, you could go with the HubSpot Starter Edition. It's got more features than MailChimp Customer Journeys, and it is more scalable. But again, you're going to be starting off at a much higher price point. That'll do it for today's episode of Good Morning Podcasters. You can find links to this article and more on goodmorningpod.com. Join Jeff Townsend and I tomorrow morning. Each Saturday morning, we release a new episode of Podcasting Sucks, where we talk about the difficulties of podcasting. This week, we're talking about video podcasts and whether or not you should use air quotes around the word podcast if you're talking about a video. If you subscribe to Good Morning Podcasters, you're already subscribed to Podcasting Sucks because we publish it right in this here feed. So please subscribe, and we will talk to you tomorrow morning right here on Good Morning Podcasters. Thanks for tuning in. Good morning, podcasters. Nothing like starting your show off with a yawn to really get people amped up to listen. My name is Fuzz Martin, and this is Good Morning Podcasters, a semi-weekly show about marketing, advertising, social media, and public relations for podcasters. Today, we're talking about pitching news about your podcast to journalists. Specifically, we're talking about whether or not you should be pitching news about your podcast to journalists via social media. We're going to explore some data today from Cision's annual State of the Media report. Cision, which sounds like the back half of the word decision, is a software as a service platform for earned media and public relations professionals. Cision is known for its database of journalists that PR pros use to contact journalists for pitches, press releases, media alerts, etc. Cision also owns PR Newswire, PR Web, a website called Help a Reporter Out, and we'll talk about each of those on upcoming episodes. In their State of the Media report this year, they had some really interesting data regarding journalists and the use of social media. So let's start first with which social media platforms journalists are using in their professional lives. According to Cision's report globally, 63% of journalists use Facebook, 59% use Twitter, 56% use LinkedIn, 44% use Instagram, 28% on YouTube, 28% on WhatsApp, 5% on TikTok, and only 1% on Snapchat. Now, if you're in the U.S., you may be wondering why WhatsApp is so high on the list. Well, it's because that was the global list. WhatsApp is used a heck of a lot more in Europe and Asia than it is in the U.S. When we look at the breakdown of what platforms journalists are using here in the U.S., Facebook is about the same, 62% versus 63% globally. Twitter is much higher. It's at 70% in the U.S. and only 59% globally. LinkedIn is also higher at 61% versus 56%. Instagram is lower, 39% versus 44%. YouTube is lower as well at 23 versus 28. And WhatsApp in the U.S. is only at 4%, whereas globally, again, the average is 28%. So now let's talk about whether or not you should pitch journalists via social media. Again, should you DM a journalist your pitch? I will start by saying this: never pitch a journalist unless you know what they write about. Do your homework. Otherwise, you might risk looking really bad or getting blocked. Decision Report said that 91% of pitches that journalists receive are irrelevant to them. And what is a DM or an email if it's not relevant? It's spam. That's what it is, spam. And you don't want to waste your time spamming people. So do your homework. Only pitch journalists that would genuinely be interested in carrying your story. This is what Cision recommends. This is straight from their list here. Google them, find out what topics they cover. Know their work, review their past stories. Look at their editorial calendars. This will tell you what they're going to be writing about coming up. Check out their feeds. You can look at their social media and see what they're posting. And if the kind of story that you're going to pitch to them fits within that kind of story that they post, go for it. And fifth on Cision's list for doing your homework about journalists, know their location and which areas they cover. If you're talking about a speaking engagement in the U.S., but that journalist only covers, let's say, India, it won't be relative to them, and you're going to just be spamming them. So put in the work. Only pitch quality stories to journalists who will think that your story is quality. And it's more like online dating than a numbers game. Okay, you just got to get your pitch right to the right person. So back to the question, is it okay to pitch journalists via DM on social media? As Ariel Nissenblatt has been saying lately, it depends. But here's what the data says. The question asked in the survey, how do you feel about PR pros reaching out to you on social media? Only 4% said that they approve it over any other approach. 23% said it's acceptable. Another 27% said it depends on the approach they take. 34% said they don't prefer it. And 12%, so that's 3 times as many that said that they approve it, 12% said they hate it and will most likely block you for reaching out to them that way. That's more than 1 out of 10 journalists. So what does this mean to you? Well, it means, 1, be mindful. If you are mindful, you have done your research on the journalist, and you are certain that your news is relevant to them, and you have a well-thought-out pitch, you've got about a 54% chance of that pitch being read. That said, you also have a 46% chance of being ignored or, worse, blocked. Another good idea is to check the journalist's social media profiles and see if it says something like DMs open. If so, that might be your in. All that said, journalists overwhelmingly prefer email as their method of communication, and I would recommend just sticking to tried and true email unless you already have a relationship with that journalist. And in that case, reach out to them however you think that might work out. You've got their phone number, send them a text. Just don't start cold pitching journalists through Facebook Messenger, your Twitter DMs, or through LinkedIn Mail. So to recap, journalists in the U.S. are using Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn the most. Be sure you're only pitching the right journalists, and also consider using email instead of social media unless that journalist's social media profile indicates that they like DMs. I'll link to the Cision State of the Media report in the show notes and on goodmorningpod.com so you can read more and go dig in for yourself. There's lots of great information in that report. And that will do it for today's episode of Good Morning Podcasters. Thanks to the 8 new subscribers I got on the Good Morning Inbox newsletter this past Monday. This week, I give you 32 ways to grow your podcast's email subscribers. Go to gmp.fm/news. That's GMP as in Good Morning Podcasters. gmp.fm/news to get the newsletter and sign up. It's free forever to anyone who signs up before January 3rd, 2023. Again, my name is Fuzz Martin, and I appreciate you listening to Good Morning Podcasters. We'll talk again Friday. Good morning, podcasters. Are you putting out an episode this week? Let's talk about podcasting and holidays. My name is Fuzz Martin, and this is the all-new Good Morning Podcasters. It's Thanksgiving week in the United States. That means millions of people will be traveling. AAA is predicting that 48.7 million Americans will be traveling more than 50 miles by car for Thanksgiving this year. Another 4.5 million will go through the air. So are you taking a week off of posting a new episode this week? Do you think that's a good idea? It's obviously your call and you deserve a holiday too, but let's talk about this for a minute. According to research done by New Voodoo Media Services in May of 2022, I'll link to their findings in the show notes, 49% of podcast listeners listen while driving. That's 55% of millennials, 48% of Gen Xers, and the Gen Z kids brought the average way down because not all of them are driving yet. While PodTrack does say that podcast listening does take a dip on Thanksgiving and on Black Friday, listenership is above average in the days leading up to and the days following the holidays, likely the time when people are traveling to and from their family's house. And so we don't have to do this episode again in a month. PodTrack's findings are similar around Christmas and New Year's. However, New Year's has a huge spike right after the first of the year. So no matter what you're doing, plan to get new content out right away at the first of the year so you don't miss out on that boom. Obviously, people are listening in the car. I'm guessing if they're traveling with family and kids, their listening habits might change a bit. For instance, if your podcast contains expletives, you may see a bit of a dip during that travel time if people are traveling with family. If your podcast is business related, there's a chance you could take a dip as well. But let's think of some of the places where people might be listening while they're spending time off for the holidays. Some are going to listen while they're in the kitchen cooking green bean casserole, which is, by the way, the number one best Thanksgiving dish, hands down, or maybe second to stuffing. They may be listening more in their downtime as they go for a walk to get away from screaming kids or go to the gym to walk off all that extra pumpkin pie. They might just have some more personal time where they can do things they enjoy, and hopefully listening to your podcast is one of those things. Again, you are completely entitled to time off. It's your show, your choice, but if you're on the fence, don't squander the opportunity. Put on an episode. I'll be off the rest of the week. I'm just kidding. We'll have 2 more episodes at least this week. I hope you'll listen while you're on your way to or from your family's place. And I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. Be sure to check out my latest Good Morning Inbox newsletter. This week, I give you ways that you can promote your podcast that aren't Twitter. You can find me on myspace.com/FuzzMartin. I'm just kidding. I'm still on Twitter at GM Podcasters. Links to the studies and information we heard available on goodmorningpod.com. You can also find me now on Instagram at Good Morning Pod. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon right here on Good Morning Podcasters. Good morning, podcasters. Today we explore Gen Z and what kind of podcasts they're listening to. My daughter Bree is a college freshman, and she's back home for Thanksgiving weekend. Yay! While we were sitting at the counter, I took the opportunity to talk to her about what she's listening to and what her friends are listening to when it comes to podcasts. Now, I would have interviewed her, but our 7-year-old was feeling left out, and that was becoming a thing. So I'm just going to relay the responses to you. Parenthood, am I right? So first I asked her what specifically she listens to when it comes to podcasts, and she said these are the 5 shows she listens to regularly. 1, Therapy Gecko. That show's description: an unlicensed lizard psychologist travels the universe talking to strangers about absolutely nothing. They post new episodes 3 times a week. They stream them live on Twitch, and they take call-ins from guests, and apparently it's hilarious. 2, she listens to Anything Goes with Emma Chamberlain. Their description: Emma prefers to share her thoughts with a microphone rather than a physical human being, so thank God she has a podcast. Recorded from the comfort of her bed, Emma talks at length about whatever is on her mind every week. Anything really does go on this podcast. Sometimes philosophy, sometimes a random story from 10 years ago, sometimes advice, and sometimes nothing at all. You never know what you're going to get, but that's what keeps it interesting. New episodes every Thursday. Again, that's Anything Goes with Emma Chamberlain. Third thing Bree and her friends listen to is the comment section with Drew Affalo, and this one's description is, it's going down in the comments in this new weekly show from Defender of Women on the Internet, Drew Affalo. Join Drew and a new weekly guest as they explore the dreaded comment section in their tagged videos on TikTok. Through a candid discussion and lots of laughs, Drew keeps it real and gives in-depth advice on the issues that you care about most. All right, two more of these. The fourth one is Podcast But Outside. And that one is we interview a famous person but have no idea who they are, with guests Andrew McCann and Cole Hirsch. And then finally, the one that's title makes me laugh all the time. It's the Tiny Meat Gang podcast. Comedians Cody Ko and Noel Miller make you laugh, hopefully. So that's what my 18-year-old daughter is listening to. I asked Bree if there was any common thread to the shows that she listens to, and she said they're all funny or they all make fun of men. And she said they're relatable, and all of the hosts are Zs or younger millennials. It was really interesting because later I found Spotify's latest Culture Next report about listenership amongst Zs. One of the points from the report said Zs are more likely than millennials to describe their generation as, quote, stressed out, and quote, 67% of Zs say that they're stressed out versus 48% of millennials. It also says they're more likely to agree that, quote, their generation is under too much pressure to fix the world's issues, end quote, and that's 76% of Zs versus 72% of millennials. In the Culture Next report, which I will share in the show notes and on goodmorningpod.com, Spotify found that 75% of Zs in the U.S. say that they use audio to understand themselves better, which is cool. A few other points from the survey. It said in 2021, Gen Z streamed more audio than they consumed any other media, including television, videos, and video games. In quarter one of 2022, 18 to 24-year-olds streamed 578 billion minutes of music on Spotify. That was the most of any demo group and 16 billion more minutes than the 25 to 34-year-olds. Also interesting, if you're not a podcaster who is a Z, 70% of American Gen Z kids said they like, or I shouldn't say kids anymore, 70% of American Gen Z people said they like listening to and watching media from earlier decades because it reminds them of when things were simpler. So that's promising if you're running any sort of nostalgic content. All right, back to my anecdotal conversation with Bree. I asked her how she found the podcasts that she listens to, and she said that she found most of the shows that she listens to when they were snippets on her For You page on TikTok. Almost all of the shows she listens to also have YouTube versions of the show, which she watches sometimes. And when she listens to audio only, she listens on Spotify, and that's mostly when she's driving. All of the shows were an hour long or longer, and she listens or watches in segments, never watching the whole thing at once. She said if you want to connect with the Z generation, you need to be authentic, empathetic, and vulnerable, and they don't react too well to pride or bravado. This all coincides with Spotify's findings from their report that says podcasts need to go beyond sheer entertainment and serve as spaces for knowledge, learning, and even catharsis. Again, I'll link to Spotify's Culture Next 2022 report in the show notes and on goodmorningpod.com. Want to say a quick thank you to the new subscribers to the Good Morning Inbox newsletter, which comes out every Monday morning and gives you some insight that you don't hear on the show about things related to marketing, advertising, PR, or social media as they relate to podcasting. Go to gmp.fm/news to get signed up for the newsletter. It's free until January 3rd. gmp.fm/news. If you're in the U.S., have a great Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for you listening to the all-new Good Morning Podcasters. If you're not in the U.S., I hope you enjoy the rest of your Wednesday and enjoy your Thursday as well. And we'll talk to you again on Friday right here on Good Morning Podcasters.
Thanks for listening, and thanks for telling a friend. But more importantly, thank you for supporting independent content creators. If you're enjoying the podcast or like the work we're doing in the indie podcaster community, I ask you to tell just one fellow content creator that hasn't heard of this podcast or the work we're doing and share it with them. But more importantly, I hope you continue with me on this journey as the indie podcaster. Keep being you. Keep being great. And the question is, do I stay here? Will you be back? Are you gonna come back? Will you be back? Are you coming back?
Jeff Townsend Media.